Okay, guys, it's great to get together. And for our listeners out there, this is our woodwind section for the 14 Jazz Orchestra. You can see our names. That's Dr. Ed Callier and Ed Mena, Mike Brignola and Pete Brewer. So many of us have been together in one form or another for many years, for decades. Most of us interacted at the University of Miami, some of us many years ago, and then as colleagues in the South Florida music scene. I know Ed Mena, Dr. Ed Callier. Is it Dr. Brewer? It is, isn't it? Okay, and Dr. Brewer, especially through the university, and Mike Brignola, I think you and I are more acquainted in the community, although I know that you were at the U. So again, we go back a long time. We've had 4 projects that we've recorded together, and Dr. Ed Mena, Pete Brewer have been on all 4 of the projects, and Mike Brignola just came aboard this for this project. My brother Neil, who got sick during our 3rd project and was only able to record a few woodwind tracks then, and then really became very ill and was not capable of being able to contribute to this project, and passed away at the end of April. And so Pete Brewer was kind enough to say, look, I'll move over to the tenor chair. He'd been playing Barry and bass clarinet and flute with us and clarinet in that chair for the last 3 recordings. And that gave us an opportunity to bring South Florida's premier Barry saxophone player, Mike Brignola, on with us. So this is a lot of fun. I really appreciate their time. And I want to start by just trying to get a little bit background for each one of the individuals. And I thought maybe I'd start Mike Brignola. Since you're the new guy on the block, could you tell us a little bit about your background, your professional background?
Well, I actually first came to Miami in 1979, right after I had graduated from the University of Rochester. I did my 4-year undergrad degree there. So I had been playing baritone sax and bass in their jazz ensembles up there for those 4 years. I actually first picked up baritone in 10th grade. And if I do the math, I'm on year 51 as a baritone sax player. One of these years I'll get it right.
Had you finished your bachelor's then at the U, and then you went out on the road with Woody's band?
Yeah, I had. Well, when I came to Miami, I had a bachelor's degree, but my bachelor. I don't even have a bachelor's degree in music. Mine's in biology.
Oh, okay. You're a smart guy. Okay.
I wouldn't go that far, but so it was. I didn't think. I guess I was young enough that I could put up with the road life. So I spent the next 7 years with Woody. Played his last about 1,000 in the U.S. and abroad, and we did about 5 or 6 albums. And he
Well,
stopped.
I wasn't aware that you were with him that long. I mean, I knew you played on the band for a while, but that's a long haul. Well, Eddie Mena, I know, of course, that you were on Maynard's band, but tell us a little bit about your background.
I had started playing professionally when I was 12. I started clarinet when I was 8 and took lessons. But oddly enough, man, I didn't really gravitate to want music because both my parents divorced. And I thought, if I become a musician, I'm going to end up like they did.
Yeah,
so I always played, loved playing, and started playing. My first New Year gig, it was 19. I was 12 years old.
When did you start at the U? When I met you?
In '77, not too long. I was sitting in with Ira and Mark Colby, God rest his soul, and Eric Traub, the same way, asked me to prepare a tape, and I made a tape and got the band, got the gig. I was always a school teacher. I just retired 4 years ago, 32 years of teaching, being a band director and doing a zillion weddings and bar mitzvahs. But I was fortunate to rub elbows with Eddie and Mike and Pete and have take lessons from you. And I'm a blessed cat, man.
Well, your dad too. Your dad must have been a big influence.
He got me started doing club dates, and that's where I went. I didn't do, the only time I really practiced hard was with Eddie Kane on flute and with you. You know, everything else, like in improv class, they'd say you got to come with two. I think it was probably you come with 2 new songs a week memorized. I was memorizing tunes out of the #1 book, fake book, back in 1963.
Yeah, that's your dad's influence there. He knew a million tunes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So in any event, here I am retired, living in Chattanooga. This was the first.
In the life of luxury?
Yeah, the life of luxury.
Yeah, well,
every day is Saturday now that I'm retired.
Yeah, that's it. You musicians make a lot of money. Well, Pete Brewer, tell us a little bit about your background before we get to Dr. Ed.
Oh yeah, well, it's interesting. I'm a couple of years younger than Mike and Ed, but what's interesting how our experiences still overlap so much because of school at University of Miami. But I grew up in Virginia, and I grew up in a small town, and I didn't really get a lot of. I always kind of knew that I wanted to learn how to play some jazz, and it was challenging to find a good teacher, but I managed to find some guy on a military base in Norfolk, Virginia, on an amphibious base who could play. I think he was from New Jersey, but he knew a lot about jazz, so I would take some lessons from him when I got in high school. But then eventually, I like the other guys, I made my way down to the University of Miami. Bring it up when I see you. You were my first improv teacher. Oh, I took sophomore improv with you when I was there. I think that was 1987.
I'm sorry.
And that was really when it really opened my eyes and my ears, because I was really hungry and I hadn't found anyone who could articulate things very clearly. And so it was really a blessing for me to be able to come down to school down here and do something. I had to get a job. I had to get some gigs. So in those days, this was 1990, 91, but there was still a lot of salsa gigs. A lot of Latin bands were working all over the place, and they would come and get guys, pluck horn players out of school because they needed horn players. There was so many bands. It was like 52nd Street going up and down 8th Street. There was so many clubs still going, and I know that was kind of the tail end of that. But that was like a master's degree for me. I was a year doing that, but the rent and they didn't pay much, but rent wasn't as much back then either. So, but I was surviving, and I was always very grateful for that experience, because I really was also, when you get out of school, now you got to do a real gig. So it's not the same thing. You have to do the thing. Where I actually started leading a band at a club. I made a connection over there, and there was a club on the island of Mallorca that wanted American music. So they had like a 12-piece band, and they brought all the guys from Miami, and they would bring a singing group, which was they bought the rights to a Drifters show. So there was like a Motown show, and we would do dance music and cocktail music and all the standard fare for a kind of a Vegas style floor show. So I did that for 8 years, and after that I came back to Miami, and I currently full time at Barry University. I've been doing that for about 12 years now. So I got into teaching, and I still have the pleasure of working with these guys, all of them. Not so much Ed Main ever since he left town, but I can see Dan, you came to your senses and finally got yourself a real Barry player. So for the group, so that's you can't teach an old dog new tricks, I guess.
Well, listen. I'm learning a lot listening to you guys that I never even knew if all the years that we've been together. But Dr. Ed, we go back. I think Ed Callahan and I met. He was maybe not even 18 yet. I think when he first showed up at the U and was extremely motivated, worked incredibly hard, which he's still doing to this to this day, and has been a featured soloist with us from the first day we started in 2013 as a rehearsal band, and played our first concert at Miami-Dade College, and we were well received. Played another one, and then somebody was crazy enough to say, "Why don't we record?" And that's what got us started with our first project. Half of that music was not actually written for the guys in the band. It was arrangements I had done for other groups. And then as we played together more and I got to know the players, then of course, as Duke Ellington always said, you got to write the music for the people in your band. That's how you get the best results. So Ed, tell us a little bit about your background, if you would. I know you've had a solo career. You've had a career in commercial music in two different forms of jazz, from the straight ahead to the smooth jazz, and a lot of your own recordings. I failed to ask. I had mentioned before everybody got on the call that I knew that Ed Maina had produced his own CD. Pete, did you produce your own? Do you have a CD that you produced? Yeah,
It's in the make. Not yet. It's in the
not
making
yet.
still.
Okay, what about
Yeah.
you, Mr. Brignola? Did you?
No, I don't have my own.
Okay, you were in the quartet. So go ahead, Ed. Tell us about your background when you started, and were you born in the U.S.?
No, I was born in Venezuela. My parents are from Spain. I lived in Spain as a kid as well. Uh, I fell into music by accident. My father got a note from school asking him if their son wanted to play in band, and so he asked me. My dad was really strict. I was a real student. I was really a nerd as a kid. I was just always loved books and studying and math and all that kind of stuff. And so when he asked me if I wanted to play in band, my dad asked something, I would say yes. And he said, "What instrument do you like?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "What about the saxophone?" I said, "Okay." And it just from day one was an instrument that allowed me to speak to people in a way that I couldn't do in person, because I was always a pretty shy kid, and I was an immigrant back then in Miami. I was one of the very few Hispanics in my school. In fact, the one friend that I had that was Hispanic didn't speak Spanish. So I came here not speaking English and that stuff. But I learned what I learned in public school. I was 17 when I entered UM, and I was very lucky to get into UM. It was thanks to being able to sight read music, because I didn't know anything about jazz. It just was not in my radar. I grew up listening to zarzuela and listening to Venezuelan folkloric music and stuff like that. My father listened to classical music and things like Mantovani and stuff like that. I didn't listen to salsa or any of the stuff. Venezuelan folkloric music I heard, but not much else. And then at UM, when you come in as a kid and you don't really, I had no jazz background at all, and I had played in a stage band or something, but I had no idea about that stuff. I think I heard Coltrane for the first time when I was maybe a junior in high school, and I didn't understand it. And it was thanks to Dan. I took lessons with you with Dan Bonsanti, and Dan's really the guy that introduced me to, or helped me understand, giant steps and countdown, and also a lot of the stuff in the saxophone. But being at UM was a great thing for me, because I was, I was just not up to snuff, and I walked into UM. The first band I played baritone in the fifth band. Back then they had five bands, so I was a baritone player, and I was in.
Ed, did you play any of the other woodwind instruments when you first came to the U, or it was only saxophone?
No. I played just saxophone. I actually played trumpet as a kid, so I played a lot of trumpet in high school, and I even played trumpet in marching band for a minute at UM. I'm probably the only the only lead tenor player from the concert jazz band to ever play in the marching band at UM. I did that for,
Wow.
I was in that band for 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah, because I needed the money. So I did it. And I also had a lot of fun. I have made a lot of friends. And it was great for air. And so it was, it was a lot of that kind of stuff. And I've always been a football fan, so that was kind of cool.
In that era, we all had to play all of the woodwind instruments. Otherwise,
Yeah,
you couldn't work.
I was a music ed major when I came into UM. Always wanted to have a job. A recording by Mike Brecker with Dave Reutzstein playing Invitation, just a cappella at Montreux, and that was it. From that day on, I was in the practice room probably 8 to 14 hours a
I
day.
remember you transcribing several of his solos, memorizing
Yeah,
some
I
of
have a
our
whole
lessons.
notebook. I gave them to him on Jocko's birthday concert. I walked up to Michael. He didn't know me, and I gave him a stack of solos like that. And he started thumbing through them, and he looked at me like with his face like this kid's out of his mind. And he said, "Hold on a second." And he went to the back, and he got a book that they had given him in Japan. He said, "Look, they're never going to print this book because they can't get the rights for the songs." So, and he had never met me. He said, "Take this, make a Xerox, and bring it back for me tonight." My life just revolves around practicing, studying the saxophone. I was lucky enough to play, in the concert jazz band, and that rhythm section. And we started a band called The Company, which played in town in Miami. We played 6 nights a week for many, many, many years. That band eventually, I had recorded with Gloria Stefan, and we went to do the Carson show, and Emilio was very unhappy with his band. And he said, "What do I do?" I said, "Well, you need a better band." So he came to the club where we were playing the next night. So I flew back from LA, and he and Gloria came, and they took the whole band with
Wow.
them. And to this day, most of those guys are still the band. The John Lovell, who couldn't, they had a trumpet player. So John Lovell, I went to record with Jimmy Buffett, and Jimmy Buffett asked me if I knew somebody who played trumpet and percussion. I said, "Yeah." I said, "He doesn't play Latin percussion, but this guy is like the world's greatest hand percussionist. You have to hear him." So he called John Lovell, who's an incredible trumpet player. He was in the company with myself for many years. Called him at Circuit City where he was working. They called him off the floor, and John went to audition with him, and he's been a part of Buffett's band ever since. So, the U is just a place where we all sort of grew up together, and I've been fortunate to just have lots of opportunities and be on. I've always been more on the pop side than on the jazz side. A lot of people don't even know that I play jazz. I don't worry about those things, but I feel fortunate to be in this band, to work with you. I'm so happy that you're finally getting a chance to have your music heard. I remember the first rehearsals and the first readings, and I've always loved the way you write and the way you play. I used to go live clubs in Miami and studied with you for a long time, and learned a lot. And so I'm just lucky, and I'm lucky to share the space with these guys, and just trying to work at it, trying to get better. That's all we can do.
Well, over the years, there's been a lot of changes in the record business. I mean, right? We all got started during the analog recording, with tape and slicing and splicing and all of those things, doing everything from pop to, Latin American music, jingles, all kinds of things, anything that would come along. And we made great livings during those decades. There was a huge amount of work. As a saxophone player, sometimes your reed never dried out because you were constantly going from one gig to the other. But the recording business is just nothing like it was, where we used to go and sometimes have a full orchestra or band all recording in the same room. And then we saw the evolution of overdubbing, where we would go in with a small horn section, as an example, and sweeten a recording. We did a lot of that for for the Bee Gees down here in South Florida, and Casey and the Sunshine Band, and many other recordings, and with other artists. And as time has gone on, in those days when we started, people were buying vinyl records, and then that went off the market and CDs went. And now we've gone through the era where nobody buys CDs anymore. You can't even buy a car that's got a CD player. And then now this year, we've put out our 4th project with Islands. And there's no retail system at all to sell a CD. Amazon doesn't sell them. CD Baby doesn't sell them. You can't buy them anywhere. So, all I've done is I have a handful of them. I didn't make very many of them. And I just put my email address out there and said, if there's collectors, that's how I refer to them, that would like to actually see who all the players are. They're not just going to hear a track and they have no idea who's playing. They can order a CD till they're gone, which wouldn't be too long. But anyway, so I wanted to have you talk a little bit about your experiences, either as a producer, as a so-called sideman, and then I'd like to talk specifically about our projects. But maybe Mike Brignola, maybe you would start a little bit and talk about how with this band, I think for the first time, you set up a studio in your house in order to play our music and record it. Is that true?
Yes, I had recorded on baritone sax for Mike Levine at his house a few years ago. So, and I had been in many times in Ed's great setup in his house recording. So I knew it was possible. I just had never tried it. And it was either you or Ed who said, well, call Ed Mena and ask him who to buy it from. So Ed told me to call Sweetwater. So I spent 45 minutes on the phone with somebody from Sweetwater last July. And he told me, they were very nice, and they told me everything I needed to buy. And I treated it as an investment because I got this AEA ribbon mic that was about a digit, and it's but it sounds great. And
I'm going to have to do more projects so you can pay for all that equipment that you bought. Of course, with the cheap money that I pay you, it's going to take about another 40 records before you can pay for that microphone, I'm afraid. Well, Pete Brewer, you've had a system for quite some time at your house, right? I think we actually started this system, which we'll talk about in a minute, but we actually started this system of recording in the middle of the 2nd album, and then we did almost all the track. We had to do all the tracks in the 3rd album, Cartoon Bebop, because of the pandemic. So Mike Levine, our engineer and great pianist and composer, who put all of this stuff together, but each one of the players in the band, gradually some of those players changed because we couldn't record unless they had a studio in their home. So some of our original people didn't record the last 2 albums, Cartoon Bebop and now Islands, because they didn't have a recording studio. But you've had one for quite some time and done a lot of overdubbing, etc., right? For not just for our projects, but for other people, right? Pete, did you do a lot of? Have you done a lot of recording for some other artists?
I've done. The thing is, I don't know. I think my internet might be a little slow here, but I started out like you said. It's just not been that many years. When I toured a bit with Casey and the Sunshine Band, mentioning him earlier for a few years, and we did some recordings of some singles for him, and that's when we started to that's the earliest experience of just the horns doing things separately. So the rhythm section would lay things down, and that's just that that's pop music, so it's a little bit different. It's as far as and I saw that as a motivation to just get some gear. I don't have any kind of fancy gear. It's just an interface, a good computer, a decent microphone, And
That's
then when I
important.
record doubles or bass clarinet, I started using more than one microphone, just some fields and just experimenting, and it's a lot of fun. Now you can get really deep down in that, but I just stopped. And as soon as something sounded okay, I just wanted to be able to do this for people like you. And yeah, I get some session work, just call in and lay down some singles here and there. But I've also gone to studios, even when you're doing some vision spots or things where you go in and you just write down they play the track and you write it down and you kind of make up your own part.
Well, your internet is going in and out, but that's okay. We're hearing your voice pretty clearly. But
That's
let me just go over to Ed
and
Maynard
then,
for a second,
of
because
course,
Ed, you've been doing this at your home now for quite a few years.
when we're
have you
playing,
not?
Yes. My first recording experience was in your class with my Super Scope. And of course, we had to transcribe others. We had to transcribe ourselves. So, and the importance of hearing yourself, as you used to say, the tape, which is what a tape player.
I know we
the
still
tape
say
player
tape.
tape recorder doesn't lie. And yeah, man, I mean, some of the exercises you used to give me, I wanted to quit, man. Those playing scales a half a step flat with my jaw down to my comisikiam, playing. But it taught me so stinking much. And yeah, then I even got the first mic. I called Eddie Kaye and I said, Mike, Eddie, what kind of mic should I get? He goes, get a Rode NT1000. So I bought the Rode NT1000. It's kind of a workhorse. And then I got a couple of AKG 414s, and that's what I've been working on.
That's the one I use. It is the Rode T1000 thing.
Yeah, it gave me a more of an edgy sound, which I kind of dug. But the older I got, I wanted more warmth, and I got and I have the AKG. But I'm a novice at this. I think the biggest thing I love about recording in the studio is my solos are a result of like 35 to 40 punches, man.
You giving away secrets?
Oh, I have no secrets, man. There's no pride here. That's why it's such a, what a blessing, man. To sit next to Eddie, and Dan, I was so intimidated to play, and while I was teaching school, the pressure of playing those tracks in the band, I wanted to leave a couple of times. And I am so grateful that you just spoke to me, and I'm glad I listened to you, man.
Well, I knew you could. First of all, I knew that you were undervaluing your contribution to the band and to the saxophone section. And at the time, I didn't think you had done a lot of lead alto playing. And so that was a relatively new seat for you, but you had a magnificent, you're a magnificent flute player. And so I wanted to write the most colorful music that we could play. And that's why, we have a lot of flute, alto flute, clarinet, bass clarinet. And so I don't know if that era is going to come to an end, because the demand for woodwind doublers is probably pretty much, gone. But you provided the leadership in that chair was exactly what we were looking at. So when you started to falter, other than kidnapping you and tying you up and putting you in my garage or something, just trying to talk you into it was the best possible thing. Ed Callier, you've been at it with a home studio probably the longest certainly of the four of you, and you produced your own recordings probably done all your own editing and mixing and engineering in general and everything in your studio. I mean, the number of recordings that you've done is just so freaking incredible, and the quality is just so good. You're such a perfectionist, and we can see, you're surrounded by great technology, uh, which you have the academic prowess that maybe some of us do not have. You have that math. Isn't your doctor's degree related to math and not music?
My dissertation is related to math. It's on
See?
remedial mathematics, but the statistics on there are sick. In fact, my chair said, they'll never check these because you're doing statistical stuff that nobody would want to try. So the math really helps. But I've been so lucky. I've spent my life in recording studios. I started so young recording, and I do it all the time. And I've worked with some of the greatest engineers on the planet.
How'd you absorb that information? Just from asking questions or watching them? How did you
Yeah,
pick up on it?
yeah.
Asked a lot of questions.
I ask questions, and I also, the one thing that I learned from all of you guys, and I learned it from you and Whit and Gary and from everybody that I'm friends with, is that I never take information lightly. In other words, when I'm somewhere, I'm always listening to other people and trying to learn what's going on, trying to learn from them. And the same thing in the studio. And so when if I'm in there with Tom Dowd, or I'm in there with Al Schmidt, or I'm in there with Eric Schilling, or whoever it is, I'm checking out what they're doing. I get a chance to stand behind them and look at EQ curves and look at input signals and patch bays. And I've really gotten to know microphones just because I've done it for so long. I know the sound of an API, I know the sound of a Neve, I know the sound of the Oxford, I know all that stuff. And so when I had the chance to, what happened was you start making records for record companies, and you know this well. There's no money in it. By the time you're done, you've actually lost money to do it. So I said, I'm just going to make an investment. I'm going to build a really nice studio at home. I recorded the entire big band record here with guys, so I have quite an arsenal of stuff, and I have, you see the stuff behind me. I typically will record, like for example, with a saxophone, with a tenor, I'll typically record that with a U87, and then either a ribbon mic of some type, a Rode, or it might be a tube mic or something else, just to get the color off the keys. And I always leave that for the producers, because my job as a recording musician is to provide a service for the people who are making the record. They have a better vision. You have a better vision of what you want than I do. All I can do is give you kind of raw material. So I try to do that. And then I have different setups for the woodwinds. I like using a TLM 103, the Neumann 103, and I have all kinds of different preamps for that. And I always use two mics on those instruments. Same thing with the clarinet, same thing with the soprano, just so that you can get that balance of the key sound, or the actual natural sound, and the real direct kind of bell sound, which some people love and some people hate. And so it just gives you that thing. But certainly the recording world, I still get a chance to do it quite a bit in studios, and that's always nice. But my favorite place to do it, as Eddie Mena said, is to do it at home, because the one great thing about recording is that two things will never lie to you in your life. Metronome. They will never lie to you. Everything else is a facade, but those two never lie. And it started for me at in the practice room. I still have it. I have it somewhere. I have to take a picture, put it out. But I have a little Radio Shack dynamic mic that I plugged into my Super Scope, and I used to run like all kinds of cables. So I had like I had a turntable for a while, but I had a CD player, and I would just record myself every day playing not only the stuff that I was working on, exercises, but things along with Aebersold records and transcriptions. And then while I was driving to the gig after school, I would listen to it, and I would be making notes about all the stuff that was wrong, which was, every note that I played. And so recording, as Eddie said, and as we all do, became one of my biggest teachers because it never lies to you. It tells you, hey, this note's always flat. This note's always sharp. You're ahead. You're behind. Why did you play that? You're not leaving any space. There's all that. So it's a great practice tool. And one of my favorite things is to lay down, 2 or 3 solos for people and send them to them. And then sometimes I'll lay down more if I'm really in a practice mode, and then let them kind of construct what they want. I have no ego about that kind of stuff. I just, my job is to serve the music. Like with the stuff that you write, I really want to play what that music, what your vision of that music is. And so um, it's a matter of just setting your ego out to the side and just trying to give the music what they're looking for. And you in particular, we have such a great relationship. You have a very good idea. You have a great idea of what you want. And because you're a great saxophone player, you know exactly how to express that. Some people don't know how to do that. Some producers can't do that. But you have a great way of doing that and saying, hey, I'd like this kind of color, this kind of approach, or try this, or I didn't think of that. I like that. And so it's a learning thing, and it's a blast to hear the guys on the tracks and to make music that way. Just it's
Well,
really a blessing.
as we kind of wrap this thing up, the last thing I would really like to touch on is how you prepare for the kind of recording that we do, which is really quite different. One of the advantages we don't have is to get in a room and rehearse and be able to talk back and forth about this phrasing and that phrasing and the dynamics here and a building more intensity and what kind of a sound we want to get out of the woodwinds or the sound. We don't get any of that. So I think the reason that we can do it is because we all know each other. And then as a person who's writing and orchestrating for the band, I have a sense of what your natural affinities are. So when I write something, I already pick the piece that I'm going to orchestrate, and I already pick my approach to it based on who's going to play it. So I know what kind of a sound Pete's going to give me, and Ed's going to give me, and Ed Callier is going to give me, and now Mike is going to give me, because I'm so familiar with your playing. So I don't even have to write instructions or talk to you. We just lay down some of these emulations, not even real tracks, and then we send you a part, and it's got maybe the cutoffs where we want the note cutoff, and after that, it's just in your hands. And the real risk is the rhythm section parts. I mean, if I didn't know, Lee Levin and Mike Harvey and Peter Erskine, I didn't know they're playing well enough and could figure out, well, who should do this and who should do that, since they're all tremendous, gifted drummers, can play a lot of different styles. So during the first 6 months when I'm planning these events, it's all about picking out what I think the players are going to enjoy playing, sound their best at, and then as a band putting it all together. And then I do take the listeners into account. I mean, I don't want to do all this, spend the money, have everybody do all this work, and then nobody hears it. So I don't worry about doing it for musicians, if you know what I mean. I just want to have something that all different groups of people can find a track or two that they enjoy. So that's my preparation, and then I turn it over to each one of you, and every time you get it, it's a different array of players or emulations that are on it. Ed Mena, you've had solos on this album where I don't think you had very many Did you even have the whole rhythm section when you were?
No, I'm usually I'm kind of one of the first horn players and I'm thinking, now what is Eddie going to think of this? But maybe I should lay back a little more. And then, I'll kind of think, and I don't hesitate to call you, and you kind of give me a guide to how to approach the line or the phrase. But I tell you, man, when I saw that flute part on Islands, I said, what What a guy, like Jean-Pierre Rampal or, oh my gosh. So, but in any event,
Nailed it.
talking to you and you guiding us through it alleviates any challenge.
Well, I will say this. I'm now that the band rarely, I don't think it's been a couple of years since we actually played together and did a concert or anything. So a lot of the music that I've handed over to you guys to record are not things I would ever think we would play necessarily in a live concert. Most of the cases, they're either too hard or they're so sensitive that we'd have to rely on a sound man or woman ruining the sound of the orchestra. So almost everything on this album, there's a few exceptions, are not things that I would ever pull out if we were going to do a concert again. Where the first two albums, that was my mentality. I don't want to write something where you can't switch from one woodwind to the other fast enough. Can't get from the Barry to the bass clarinet, because there's not enough bars. So now you've done 2.5 of the albums, Edmena, like this, right? Where you've had these different situations and different tracks available. Do you have a favorite? Do you like to hear everybody, like the whole rhythm section? And would you rather have all the horns already on it, or do you like it to be thin and there's not very many playing? What feels the best to you?
Well, my upbringing, my honing, my training was doing our sectionals in 207. It was, hey, let's breathe here. Let's cut off on the and the two. And the things that I've done worked, and or Mike has got the know-how. Mike Levine is got the genius of splicing and dicing and editing, things. I mean, Pro Tools. I mean, if I hang over, man, I slice it off, taper it off, and make it sound like that's the way I intended it. But yeah, it's, to me, recording now is like, for me, because I'm in a different league than you guys are professional, have been professional musicians your whole stinking life, and your whole blessed life. And when you're doing marching band and field trips and stuff like that, I had to rely on a lot of bells and whistles and tricks and smoke screen. But
well,
that's why I think I'm so fortunate. I'm so fortunate to, have led the life in education and still been able to rub elbows with you cats, So I'm very fortunate, very grateful.
Well, I'm hopeful that we'll have more opportunities. If we can all stay healthy, because as we're getting older, and we have the benefit of our experience, but we also, every day we're grateful if we have decent health and that we can continue to do what we love. Pete Brewer. So now that we moved you over, where you're playing some tenor and you played clarinet and flute on this project, has that been a change for you at home with your recording, or is that just straight ahead, just like before?
It's a little bit of a change.
Your internet connection is
only because I've spent so I do a lot of gigs on tenor, but they're mostly pop gigs, right?
okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm in a hotel in Savannah, Georgia, so I don't know what's going to happen. But yeah. So I those are mostly pop settings that I use, that I play tenor. So it's almost like my pop world is tenor and my jazz world is E flat, alto or tenor, or and some flute.
Right.
So the biggest challenge is just hearing when your fingers are like this. Combinations are now a fourth away. So but with it, it's not something that I haven't done. And I, like Ed was saying, he talks about cutoffs and the discipline of the section. In this setting, really, what I try to do is match, because I generally get the tracks after Ed Mena has laid down the lead alto part. There's been a couple times where that's not true, but also a lot of the lines that the low saxophones have are with trombones and with trumpet. So I'm always just trying to match, and I usually listen to the tracks several times and mark the cutoffs before I try my own thing, and I write things like lay back here or don't. So it's just a way of matching. And so, which is to me the most efficient way to do it. And also, I can trust the musical interpretation of everybody in the band so much, and a lot of it does go back. And I know my camera cut out earlier about when I was about to talk about this. It is about our familiarity with each other,
Yes,
and the fact that we all learn from a lot of the same guys, and there was that culture at that school that really, I mean, you had to have it together, man. You had to do that stuff. And if you were gone in about 2 days. So I really liked that. I really thrived in that. I needed that. I needed to feel that pressure, because it really prepared me for this, for like Ed, was saying. I mean, when you get in the studio, that's a lot of pressure. That's a lot. Somebody's spending a bunch of money for you to be in there. And so you better play it.
that was the era of having to nail it the first time if you wanted to get another gig in the studio. So we all had to learn to read incredibly accurately and articulate and communicate and all of that. I never could have done Jitterbug Waltz the way I intended without you four, because I knew what I was going to get on the woodwind of each, how Pete would sound on the clarinet part, how Mike would sound on the bass clarinet, and how nice a bass clarinet solo, the way Mike would play it, would sound, and the flute parts, alto flute, C flute. And so all of those kinds of things I already had in my mind, and I could hear it because I know you guys, so well. And even though I learned a lot about your backgrounds tonight musically, I had heard Mike Mignola in the sax quartet that he had with Ed Mena and Gary Keller and Gary Lindsay, and I'd heard him play bass clarinet, and that's why I heard him play a bass clarinet solo for the first time. So I said, "Ooh, this would be a perfect vehicle for a bass clarinet solo," but I contacted him first and said, "Listen, would you be willing to play a bass clarinet solo on this? Because I don't know how often now, given the way things are, how much he had an opportunity to improvise on bass clarinet anymore." So I didn't know if he was going to say, "Look, I haven't done that in 10 years. I don't know if I'd be comfortable doing it." But one of the great things about you guys recording at home is you can keep doing it and doing it. Doing it until you get it exactly the way you want. Even as great improvisers as the four of you are, when you have to do that live, maybe they'll give you a second shot. Like when Ed Callie was recording with the Jaco Pastorius big band. Okay, so when they recorded, I don't know, maybe they gave Ed a chance to do more than one take. I doubt it, knowing Peter Graves. But I think you probably got one shot at it. And if you didn't like it, it was tough. That's all there was to it, right? So that's what we got with the, in the old days. And with this being brand new from a recording standpoint with you, Mike Brignola, because you were fussing with the equipment probably at the same time, trying to get the best sound of the baritone and then bass clarinet. And you played quite a bit of flute on this project too, did you not? Played alto flute.
Yes, I played both alto and soprano and bass clarinet. I was just looking at all my parts. The only one that I probably couldn't play live is because when I did my bass clarinet and baritone part on Jaco, after I did it, you asked me to flute. So I see that's the only one that I have two parts for.
Right.
But I could almost do it if I
because of the
had
switch.
the horn set up.
That's what I'm
If I
saying.
had the horn set up that I could,
Yeah.
because there's
It'd be
one
like,
right.
hit yourself in the nose and the
flute.
eye when you're trying to change.
And I'd have one bar to get to a bar and a beat to get to the baritone. I'd have to put it down and go to the
That's what I
baritone.
mean about writing for recording
Yeah.
and not for. I'd probably have to, if we picked any of these charts to play someday live, I'd probably have to redo them, for that. So as a featured soloist, a lot of the solos this time Pete didn't, because we switched them over and I didn't anticipate that. There were really no improvised solos this time, which I apologize. So our audience
Quite all
doesn't
right.
know what a great soloist that Pete is. Where on the other projects he had a couple of Barry solos, and then
Yeah,
Mike,
you gave me some.
right?
Yeah, you gave me some nice action on the other ones, so that's all right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll catch you up. And then when Mike came on,
that's all
I'd
right.
already written about three-quarters of all the charts. So, and I was up in the air as to, for solos and all that kind of stuff. So we didn't get a Barry solo for him either. But so Ed Callier, before we close this thing up, so you usually get the lion's share of the hardest parts, because I envisioned something like Islands, which if I would have killed myself if someone would have asked me to ever play something like that. I would have just said, look, I'm sorry, but you have to get somebody else. So anticipating what your skill level is, and your technical abilities, not just on the instrument, but also for recording, I tend to pick some really challenging stuff. This is the stage right now when I finish a project and I'm sick to death of all the music we record, and I never want to hear it again as long as I live, and you feel the same way, I'm sure. But now I start to listen just in case I'm crazy enough to do another one in the future. I start to pick out, music. So I've been listening to albums that I used to listen to a lot in the 80s. We're like a retro band. We really don't play anything that's like brand new. We don't play like the hippest music that's going on right now in New York as an example. But we just try to do our own thing on some recordings and some music that we really appreciate. So I'm already picking out some tough stuff for the four of you to have to play on the next. So if you think Islands was a challenge, wait till you see if I can write it. It's so easy to write on the computer. It just sounds easy, until I send it to you guys. So Ed, talk a little bit about Islands in particular, because that was a beast. Really a beast.
The whole record is hard. I mean, there's just nothing easy about it. One thing I do want to say is that all of you and the whole band is just a group of incredible musicians, and I have great respect to where I don't think about I don't worry about whether it's going to work or not, because I know who I'm working with, and I know I have so much respect for what they do that if they decide to make a turn that's left of what I thought was going to be, I just follow it. It's no problem. That part of it is easy when you have players of this caliber and friends of yours who you respect so much. That part of it is easy. In terms of Islands, it was hard on every level. I mean, you have to make sure that you're in tune, and I'm not a fan of tuning the stuff on Pro Tools. I'm a fan of doing it in real time. I won't use like, for example, I don't do the cutoff thing with the technology. I do everything in real time. It's a practice thing for me. It's got nothing to do with whether I did it in real time or not. It's got to do with it. That's what I was trained to do, and I want to keep doing it. I don't want to leave the planet always having to use a tool to do that kind of thing. But to match Maneri, and time, percussive instruments respond so easily to time, and saxophone players, we tend to fumble, or we tend to lay back, or we tend to not speak as clearly enough. So these records have really helped me with articulation. They've helped me work on time and pitch and all those kinds of things. The woodwind parts were hard. The saxophone part was really hard. The saxophone solo was really hard.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
a beast.
that thing is it's a nightmare. And of course, you have to live under the shadow of Mike Brecker, and that's an impossible shadow to get out from under. and you try not to play like that. You want to play stuff that's a little different. The influence is fine, but you don't want to play the same stuff. And I was so fortunate to hear that band play that music live. I see them and speak to them. So for me, it was kind of a rite of passage in a way. But I can tell you that these records are just an opportunity to make music, to celebrate playing with great musicians and great friends, to play your music, somebody who, without you, I would not exist as a musician. And it's a chance to learn. And I find myself working harder now, probably than I've ever worked in my life. I'm going to retire from teaching at the college this year. I'm actually out on sick leave right now, but I'm really focused on becoming a good musician. And this experience and these experiences with the stuff that we're doing together really help.
Well, you have some special stuff before we finish. You're doing some, tell me about the project you have going that's sort of education, isn't it? In South
Yeah.
America?
I'm the I was asked to lead the Diodario Academy in Latin America. They asked me to kind of head this thing up, and so I created an entire platform, because what happens is that I travel to South America a lot, and a lot of those kids and a lot of the musicians there don't have the opportunities that we have. And being one of them, and being a person who speaks Spanish, and for them, I'm one of the people they follow. I really wanted to help a new generation of musicians all throughout the Americas to prepare for entry into universities, conservatories, colleges. And so we've created a system that is designed to help people do that. They're recording everything, so they're creating digital portfolios. And it's very exciting. Great professors, great attitude. We have a lot of students, thousands of students. It's all free. It's all through the Diodario Foundation. And I feel really fortunate to take all that experience that I have as a scholar and as a teacher and as a musician, and to really help the same way that you did for me, and you to help a new generation of players who really deserve an opportunity. And while the business is not the same, we're teaching kids, for example, they have to record themselves the same way that we're doing on our project. So we want to train a whole new generation, and I really want to help. We all want to help that side of the world achieve their optimal potential.
Mhm.
And it's incredible the amount of talent there is in the world, and I'm just thrilled to be able to help with that.
And the music, it's funny how the
Following your
music,
lead.
yeah, the music has more popularity in many ways outside of the US, Europe, Asia, and the Americas. But well, before we finish, does anybody have any last comments or something that they would like to contribute? And for our viewers and listeners, obviously, we'll be doing some editing in order to make this something that they don't have to give up their whole night to listen to. But this has been a privilege. But any other comments, anything that somebody would like to say before we close off the recording?
Well, for me, I'm very thankful for all of you, and very thankful for the opportunity to make music with you and learn from you. I have undying respect and admiration. I'm your biggest fan, and that goes for each one of you and all the people in the band, Jason and Erskine and Lee and everybody else, Mike Harvey and Mike Levine. So I feel very fortunate, and I hope that people enjoy the music as much as we enjoy trying to get it right and make music for them.
I think this is our best project together so far. I mean, I feel like
I
each
agree.
one has improved in one way or another. And so, I have a lot of pride in what we've accomplished individually and collectively, and all the
Yeah,
fun. Go ahead, Pete.
it's a pleasure to play with people that you trust like this. You can relax to a certain extent, while at the same time you feel the pressure that you want to contribute and be strong, because you're playing with great musicians. So and that's that's a exhilarating feeling, and that's what a musician wants to feel, you know. So
You don't want to let each other down.
I'm very
Pulling your weight.
That's right, and it feels good, and so thanks, Dan, for the opportunity to do this.
Oh,
Ditto. I just need to heartfelt and sincere gratitude to you, Dan, to all the friends that have inspired us and pushed us along the way, whatever journey, and how, if we took the scenic route or whatever. I'm just incredibly grateful to know you and have shared music with you.
It's both ways, to say the least. It's been a privilege, and like I said, I'm hoping I'm insane enough to want to do this at least one more time if my
Hope so.
cognitive skills can remain somewhere collectively useful.